All right, well, welcome everyone. Good afternoon. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Colleen Creaser, and I am the chairperson of the biology department at Pine Manor. I've been at Pine Manor for 13 years, and so I had the great pleasure of working with Beth over these last 13 years, even after she retired. She stayed a close member of the program and was always there for advice when I needed it. So I want to thank you all for coming today to honor Beth and her life and legacy. I know that she would be so happy to see everybody coming together today for this celebration. I just wanted to share a slide quickly just with the order of events so that you have a general idea of how today is going to go. Let's see if I can share my screen again. So we have a number of pre-organized speakers who are going to talk about Beth and share stories and their relationships. I have received some remembrances from alumni that I am going to read towards the end, and then we'll open it up at the end for anybody who wants to share a story or a memory of Beth. At the end, we do have a beautiful slideshow of photos, so we'll do a couple of speakers and then share the slideshow, and then we'll have a few more speakers. Also, please feel free to use the chat if you want to type in a remembrance of Beth. Like I said, that will be recorded and saved as well. So you're free to, raise your hand to speak at the end or share any memories throughout in the chat as you would like. At this point, I'm going to stop sharing and turn the floor over to President Tom O'Reilly, who will lead us off.
Well, thank you, Colleen, and thank you everyone for being here. What a great showing this is for Beth. I should be very impressed. There might be 75 people on here if the pages work right. So that's really impressive. It's a crazy time, and it's so hard when we don't get to see people at the end of their life. And that's become particularly mindful to me as I've lost people in this last year. But I feel very fortunate that Beth was someone who always made her presence known. And Beth reached out to me very early on when I came to the college, and she said to me, you have a big job, and it's a tough job, and you have to be tough. And I thought, wow, this is a strong person coming in, first time I'm meeting her. And then quickly she pivoted. And she pivoted because she started talking about the students. And she said, we have to keep the one student at a time. We have to recognize who our students are and what it takes for them to succeed. And we have to rethink things. And I said, well, can you help me? And she said, I will help you. And Beth was always there. I would get the email response to my community emails. I would get the phone call, sometimes more commanding than other times. I've had the invitations to come out to her house and see the beautiful gardens and bird feeders and all the animals that she cared for. And I sensed very much that for Beth, it was a whole life sort of thing. It was in Pine Manor College was interestingly at the center of it. She had made her career here. She started her career here. She decided that this was going to be what her life was about. And from the trees in the center of the campus, to the greenhouse, to the biology department in Dane, and what she did with technology, she was always thinking about what else we could do to have this whole experience. That biology wasn't just something you put on a shelf or in a test tube. It was a way of living, and this could be expanded. And I thought of Beth at a couple of times in particular. Once was when she called me most recently. She really wanted to have a conversation about what it meant, the new change that we were having at Pine Manor College, the BC Pine Manor College integration. And she told me, and it surprised me almost, that this was one of the best things she could see happening, because it was a way of ensuring continuation of the mission of Pine Manor College. She knew she'd missed parts of it. She knew some of it wouldn't be right, but she knew that there was an opportunity there that she thought was unbelievable. And I felt very touched by that she reached out on it. I thought of, when I think of Beth, I think of a couple of things. And one is a quote by Vijay Sahedri, who has come to Pine Manor College and speak. He's a poet. And one little line in one of his poems is, "It takes a long time for the human to become human." And I often think of Beth when I think of that. And I think about how she understood that there were imperfections in life. She understood that things didn't always go right, but that you had to keep at it. And the only way you'd get better is if you kept at it. I thought, wow, I just got to pick up some of that stuff and live like her. I didn't know Beth the way you folks, well, many of you knew Beth. You worked with her, you were taught by her, you were coached by her, I was coached by her, but I didn't know her the way so many of you did. So I feel honored to have the chance to speak about her. I did want to read one short poem, because it too, every time I look out my window and I see that evergreen that her family put on campus, I think of a poem that my mother also used to say a lot, by Joyce Kilmer. It's about the tree. And I'd just like to end by sharing that poem and welcoming you and thanking you for coming together to talk and share about Beth's life. Joyce Kilmer wrote, and I love this poem because it catches both the humor and the sarcasm and the strength in the forward looking that Beth so often reminded me of. Joyce Kilmer writes, "I think that I shall never see a poem as lovely as a tree whose hungry mouth is pressed against the earth's sweet flowing breast, a tree that looks at God all day and lifts her leafy arms to pray, a tree that may in summer wear a nest of robins in her hair, upon whose bosom snow has lain, who intimately lives with rain. Poems are made by fools like me, so only God can make a tree." So thank you for coming here and sharing about Beth. And thank you, Colleen, for the opportunity to speak.
Thanks, Tom. Next, I'd like to invite Faculty Emerita of Psychology, Dr. Nancy White, who worked with Beth over many years, to share her remarks.
Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about what Beth was like, what it was like at Pine Manor in the science division in our earliest years. Beth was a force of nature, tough as nails, unimaginably brave. As I came to know her as the chair of the science division, she made Machiavelli look like a pussycat. And let me tell you, she wouldn't mind being described that way at all. Her death just brought back so many memories for me, beginning with how I came to Pine Manor in the first place, which really was all Beth. I had been denied tenure at Boston State College. They didn't like the fact that I was a named complainant in the sex discrimination suit against them. So I sent in an application to a bunch of places, but Pine Manor, because it had the open college, which was for returning adult women, and the nursery school, and I was a developmental psychologist, so it was perfect for me. Beth, who was really terrific of what we now call second wave feminist, she opposed her father, who didn't want her to go to graduate school and had to go with her mother paying for her because he wouldn't. She plucked my resume right out of the pile because she saw that I had gone to Bryn Mawr. And at that time, many of us, the women in the science division, were all from the Seven Sisters schools. And then she brought me in to interview with Burnham Carter. Some of you may remember him. He was the dean at that time. They hired me to teach one course in child development, and this was in the spring. By the time September came around, Beth had just sort of maneuvered things And I was full-time faculty, tenure track. That was a surprise. And it was all Beth's doing. I was a member of the science division. Then I was scheduled in September to work registration, but our kids are adopted, and they called me from the adoptive agency saying that they had an infant for me, and did I want that infant? My daughter Susie, it turned out to be. So I had to call up Beth and say, can I have a day and a half of maternity leave? And she of course said yes. And the whole science division sort of gathered around, brought in stuff, helped me get going during that extremely, very stressful time. I kept mumbling, thank God it's not my first child. Thank God it's not my first job. But people were just so kind and welcoming. And what happened was we became a community, and I was a member of that community. And it was Beth, who was our leader, Michelle Talbot, Joan Weinstein, and Audrey Stein. And that became my home. And Beth and I really became personal friends as well as academic friends. We soon discovered we had intellectual interests in common, and we proposed to co-teach a course, an interdisciplinary course, because everybody was wanting interdisciplinary at that time, and again still. And we developed the course in lifespan development, and we co-taught it. We had a wonderful time teaching it, and the students, I think, had a wonderful time, but were sometimes a little confused when we would break into arguments right in the middle of class from the biology point of view and the psychology point of view. But it worked. And we were also known for our rigorous teachers. We enthusiastically tracked down plagiarisms. We called ourselves the Faculty Investigative Bureau. And we're known for this. Every day, the science division women sat at one of those round tables in the dining hall. I don't even know if you have round tables anymore, but in those days it was called a refectory. There would be a round table, and we would just keep squeezing people in. And we shared so much. We shared all of our experience in classrooms and questions about our students. We talked about our children, work-life balance. We talked about then parenting, young kids, school-age kids, eventually college kids. We talked about people's marriages, our aging parents. Eventually, we talked about our dying parents. But and finally, I think we may have talked about grandchildren a little bit. Not only were we friends, but we were in an intellectual community. So we spent a lot of time talking about new courses, new programs, and student issues and how our students were doing. Other memories are about the parties we had. We celebrated everybody's birthday, especially Beth's. Lots of food, usually in S101, because that seemed to be a comfortable place. And then we had girls' night out, generally held at Michelle Talbot because she lived across the street from the college. And each of us would bring food and wine, lots of wine. Other memories are about the renovation of the science building, which for Beth, she reimagined it so creatively. You could not imagine what it was like, those of you who didn't remember actually seeing it in the old days. And Beth figured out what to do, really directed the architects, and I think almost sent one to a mental institution, because she would not sign off on that punch list until absolutely everything was just perfect. And it was. It was a great building then, and served the department really well for a long period of time. I can also remember when we decided we needed a biology major. We had a minor in biopsychology in the psychology program, but we were not chartered to offer science degrees. We had to apply to the Board of Education for a change of charter, which meant, of course, writing the large report to request it. We spent days. We went every afternoon into the biology department after we finished teaching. And I can remember throwing out M&Ms all the time to keep people going. And Beth was really the leader of this process. The fact that we had to go first to the curriculum committee, then through the faculty, and then to the Board of Education, Board of Higher Education. The faculty, I don't have to tell you, that was the hardest part. I'm sure some of you may remember that, but hopefully it's blanked. Ultimately we prevailed. The biology department became one of the most popular majors at Pine Manor. It was really quite exciting. I see Susan is here and Colleen, and I saw Kelly Ann, who actually I hired the first time she was at Pine Manor. It's good to see that it's still going. The memories are also about the tough times for Beth. Will Gardner, her husband, died very prematurely, and Beth was devastated. We all supported her through this really tough time. Then she got ill, and she really was ill for just years. Which I don't know if Susan, was she already ill at the time you came? Yeah, so you can see how long and she fought it, and she was brave and tough, amazing. And we all, of course, supported her. Beth and I retired at the same time. However, she kept teaching, and she kept being involved with Pine Manor. And all her, she continued to work on the facilities committee, probably driving some other people crazy. Until she died. It seems to me, and this is my final sentence, it's fitting that we have this memorial for Beth in the waning days of Pine Manor. It marks the end of an era for me and for a whole bunch of people. I will miss her, and I know you all will. Okay, Colleen, take it from there.
Thanks, Nancy. So next up, I'd like to invite Dory Key, who is both an alumna of the college from the class of 72, as well as a member of the Board of Trustees.
Thanks, Colleen. I'm also a parent, but we'll get to that. So picture this, fall of 1970. As a very young 17-year-old from Dallas, Texas, I took my first college biology class, Biology This Cell. I actually went back to my transcript and confirmed that. Seated in a large, gigantic lecture hall in anticipation, awaiting our professor, the door opened and in walked Dr. Gardner, her presence taking over and dominating the room. Accompanying her was Adam, her meticulously groomed and exquisitely trained poodle. Thus began my journey into the world of biology, zoology, life, and questions and answers. She was demanding but clear in those demands. She was generous with her time. She was forthcoming with her opinions. She was not restrained in answering honestly any question that we as young girls had about life, science, politics as it related to science. There was nothing that was off the table. I was also extremely lucky as her sister-in-law, Will's daughter, Lisa Gardner, was in my class and we became good friends. Thus, I got to spend an occasional Sunday dinner with her, walking around the Arboretum or maybe at the Audubon Estate. Wonderful extra time to learn from my mentor. Her generosity of thoughts were unique. Given her training in all of the classes, I took my journey from there to the rigors of the next step, pre-med, Duke, and It was so much more manageable with what she had given me. But going back, there was one test of hers that stood out. Zoology class, final semester at Pine Manor Junior College. When I was there, it was a junior college and single sex. Anyway, by this time, I had learned how to study for her exams, hours of review, self-quizzing, extra reading, over and over on the notes. I was ready for this exam. I gleefully opened the test. I got right at it. I knew every answer as I made my way. As they would say today, I nailed it. Gingerly, I stepped up to hand it in, so proud, self-pat on the back. As you know, she was very quick to grade. So Monday, still gloating in anticipation of my stellar work, I opened my test and I got a B+. See me in bright red letters on my test. I mean, fallen. What? No way. After class, I beelined over to her desk. She sat with this look, a mixture of amazement and amusement. You were on your way to a perfect test, then you skipped a page. Unbelievable. I had flipped over one of the pages in my excitement. We eventually shared an exasperated laugh that it was so close to perfect. Many times after I graduated, I would stop by and see her, either at school or at her home. We would have lunch or tea and just talk about everything. Flash forward. Spring semester 2016, my son Nate became a student in Dr. Gardner's nutrition class. Again, he enjoyed the same intellectual rigor, demand for excellence, and a unique opportunity to ask any question about anything. Also during his time at Pine Manor, he was fortunate to find his mentor in Dr. Bear, much as I had with Dr. Gardner. There's a great picture, and I think Colleen has it, of the four of us together at his graduation in 2018. Dr. Gardner will always have an important place in my life. She took a young, curious, but slightly reticent 17-year-old and helped her find strength in asking both easy and hard questions and maintaining that awe of the wonders of our world. Thanks.
Thanks, Dory. Appreciate that. Next, I'd like to invite Penny McLean-Nowinski from the class of 92 to speak.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Sorry, I forget you're on mute. I'm not a Zoom person. Thank you so much for asking me to speak today, and I'm really honored to talk about Dr. Gardner. And I echo many of the things that have already been said. I was at Pine Manor from 1988 to 1992, and I met Dr. Gardner in the spring of 1990 in a course called Principles of Biology. She immediately motivated me to strive to do well in her class. Her sturdy disposition was one that rubbed off on all of her students, especially me. And I remember thinking how strong and intellectual and powerful she seemed, and I became determined to meet her expectations and do well in her class. Her class was very challenging for me. I came from a small town where science wasn't as strong as it was even at Pine Manor, and I attended when it was still biopsychology. We studied things called non-cyclic photophosphorylation and hydrogen fixation and the Krebs cycle. And these were not easy things to learn, but she pushed me to learn beyond what I thought I was capable of. She was supportive when I would not achieve the desired grade. I had such high expectations of myself after learning from Dr. Gardner, and she knew it. And so she would write, I don't have great lighting, but if you can see, this is one of my tests from her class. I got a 74, which was just awful in my opinion, but she wrote next to the grade, "You will be fine." It's as if she knew that I was going to be disappointed before I even saw the grade. And she always provided an opportunity to come and talk with her about what I didn't understand. In May of '91, she presented me with the David P. Boyd Award, and this was for excellence in the biological sciences. And I have to credit her for the motivation and for the exceptional education that she gave to me in science. And I'm not sure if she knew before I even did, but the book choice has served me well in my career. I kept that too. It was a Webster's Medical Desk Dictionary, and it still has the card that she gave me and the inscription, which I treasure today. After Pine Manor, I did go on to earn both a bachelor's in nursing and a master's, and I work as a nurse practitioner today in a career that I love. And I know Dr. Gardner loved what she did. And I'm so thankful that I had her as a professor, and I credit her with inspiring me to be a strong woman of science. And I look back on my time at Pine Manor with great fondness. And my time with Dr. Gardner, as I said, was a treasure. And I know many of her other students would echo my comments, as we've discussed her passing on Facebook through comments, since we can't see each other right now and most of us don't live close. But her impact on me as a professor and as such a strong woman will forever be something I'm grateful for. And I thank you again for the honor of speaking about Dr. Gardner today.
Thanks, Penny. So we've heard a lot of stories about Dr. Gardner and her impact on students and her time and history at the college. We're going to look at a few pictures in a slideshow that has been put together. Then we'll come back and hear some more stories, but I'm going to attempt to share my screen and make sure I turn the sound on. Okay. Hold on 1 second.
You've got a friend in me. You've got a friend in me. When the road looks rough ahead and you're miles and miles from your nice warm bed, you just remember what your old past said. Boy, you got a friend in me. Yeah, you've got a friend in me. You got a friend in me. You got a friend in me. You got trouble, and I got them too. There isn't anything I wouldn't do for you. We stick together, see it through, 'cause you've got a friend in me. You got a friend in me. Some other folks might be a little bit smarter than I am, big and stronger too, maybe, but none of them will ever love you the way I do. It's me and you, boy, and as the years go by, a friendship will never die. You're gonna see it's our destiny. You got a friend in me. You got a friend in me. You got a friend in me. you'll find me, oh, somewhere over the rainbow. Bluebirds fly, and the dream that you did to, oh why can't well, I see trees of green and red roses too. I'll watch them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Well, I see skies of blue and I see clouds of white and the brightness of day. I like the dark and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people passing by. I see friends shaking hands, singing, how do you do? They really say, I love you. I hear babies cry and I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than we'll know, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
Oh, I've seen it a few times and it still makes me tear up every time. I just need to, before we move on, thank Tamara Petler, who put that beautiful slideshow together. She perfectly captured Beth's essence and spirit in the photos that she chose. And I also want to thank Barbara Schwartz, who helped me actually be able to play it so that you could see it and hear it, because that was not an easy task. Okay, so next up, I'd like to invite Dr. William Vogel, who is a faculty emerita and also former dean of the college.
Thanks, Colleen. And also thank you for making me a faculty emerita, as I think that if I can join the ranks of the powerful women of Pine Manor as an honorary emerita, that is an honor. I've been thinking, what do you say about Beth as a young whippersnapper, right? I mean, Beth built the college, and through it all, she brought that face that we just saw in the slideshows. I mean, this face that was luminous and joyful and focused on whoever was there in front of her. I mean, just focused on you. This was a lesson I learned as a colleague. You join a new faculty member, you join the crew, and you watch people. So you could see that Beth was one of those people to be reckoned with. And then in the faculty's benighted way, I became the chair of the division of sciences. And so, I guess it's the no good deed will go unpunished project. And there it became clear that if I was careful, I would pay attention to Beth. Because what do I know, right? Beth provided the through line that when I joined at the end of the 90s, I mean, my goodness, Beth had already done half the work of building the college, right? From the 60s. The students were playing basketball in the stables or some godforsaken place when the college moved there, and Beth joined the faculty not long after, right? I got there, but her work wasn't finished. So she helped me learn. She helped me learn how to be a teacher. She helped me learn how to be a colleague, because she was steady. She wasn't a pushover, right? And she was steady, and she was a teacher to the students and a teacher to her colleagues. In the continuing story of No Good Deed Will Go Unpunished, when I became the dean, it was again another example of how important and sort of relentless Beth was at continuing the mission of the college to help. Everything that she did was about success. It was about the college's success. It was about her colleagues' success. And it was absolutely about the students' success. And I mean, those were the most fabulous photos that you all found, because that was exactly who she was. And when I was the dean, we were doing all this crazy stuff. We had mountains of reports. There in the background was Beth, pushing the project along, working especially to keep the college literally standing, as well as standing in its intellectual capacity. And that's just it is hard as as a young fellow joining this powerful crew. And I really loved what Nancy said. So Beth was the boss, right? I mean, this is right, the head of the team. What an absolute wonderful, wonderful memory and description of her. And she didn't sit still. I guess that's really the two things that for me were so powerful of working with her, is that she was a teacher to me. She was a teacher to the college. And she was incredibly adaptive. I mean, she didn't sit still. She saw what needed to be done. She worked at it. So, if we all took any of those little lessons, whether we're in her classroom, and it's clear that the students in her classroom had to sit up and pay attention. And if we were smart as colleagues, we did the same thing. And that really was, was a blessing for us and a benefit for me. So she's a force of nature, absolutely. And the college will miss her, and so will the rest of us. So thanks, Colleen.
Thanks, Bill. And sorry about the emeritus switch. I had it written down right, and it just came out wrong. But you can be both. Next, I'm going to turn it over to another former dean of the college and current professor of psychology, Dr. Diane Mello-Goldner.
Yeah, thank you. It's certainly an honor to speak today about Beth. And I had a feeling that a lot of us speaking today would be sharing very similar memories of Beth, that of someone who is deeply committed to her students and to Pine Manor College as well. One of the first memories I have of Beth is probably from the first year I started teaching at Pine Manor, which was 1994. And I remember I was speaking to one of my students in Halden Hall, and all of a sudden she looked at her watch and practically ran out of my office saying she had to get to class before it started or else she was going to get locked out. So she was, of course, heading to one of Beth's classes, and she would literally lock the door right when the class started. And if you got there late, you got locked out of the class. And I thought to myself, wow, that is hardcore, But Beth didn't do that because she was a total disciplinarian. She did it because she wanted to be sure that all the students in her class had the best uninterrupted learning experience possible. She was extremely committed to her students' academic success, and she wanted them to go on to do great things just like she had done. And when you think of her accomplishments, I was always impressed by the fact that Beth earned her PhD within 3 years after earning her bachelor's degree. Now that in itself is amazing, and she liked to say that she beat me by doing that in only 3 years. So she was very proud of that fact. And when you think of the time period that she achieved this, she was likely one of the few women at Brown earning her graduate degree at that time. So that's even more impressive, and probably also explains why Beth had such high standards for her students, but also, as Bill said, for her colleagues as well. So we didn't lose out on that either. I think my relationship with Beth probably became much closer after I did become the dean. And I'm sure Bill also experienced this, where, I came to expect calls from Beth. It seemed like weekly, but they probably were just, every couple of months. And she would call me to go over whatever she thought I needed to fix, what I was doing wrong, basically what she wanted things to happen. And I'll admit that sometimes when I was sitting at my desk and the phone rang and I looked down and I knew it was Beth's number and she was calling me, I didn't always answer it. And it wasn't that I didn't want to talk to her, but I knew that it wasn't going to be a quick call, and it was going to leave me with a to-do list that Beth would expect me to address very quickly. But I would always call her back as soon as I could, and did my best to respond to her, because her best interests were always for the college. Or else I would delegate it to someone else. And if John Hatch was on this call, sorry, John, it was probably mostly you. And I can't tell you how many times poor John had to fix that shade in Dane 211 before he finally replaced it. But that's what Beth wanted, and we were going to do that to fix it as she thought it should be. Along with those to-do lists, she also, during our chats, we would share history, her life, her knowledge of the college. And once in a while, she would say, share the things that I was actually doing right, which I always appreciated. Praise from Beth didn't happen very often, and it was hard to get that. So it was always well appreciated. And I enjoyed our chats on the phones, and sometimes we would start talking about other topics like our love of dogs and detective fiction. She was a big fan of that as well. She absolutely wanted to teach at Pine Manor for 50 years. That was so important to Beth. And after retiring, even after operations, blood transfusions, so many other obstacles, she would not give up. And I think it was her continued teaching that probably helped her thrive and live as long as she did. And I'll always be glad that I was able to play a part along with Susan and Colleen to help her reach that very important milestone for her. One of the last times I think I saw Beth in person was, I believe, in the summer of 2019, when she had finally cleaned out her office in Dane. I believe that was a good 5 years after she had retired from being a full-time professor. And Lainey, thank you for your patience and sharing your office for those 5 years until she was all set. Now, Beth had just returned from a vacation to Florida, and she brought me back a present, because this is right around when I was leaving being the dean and going back to my position as a faculty member. And she was so excited to bring me this present. And she brought me a tote bag, a water bottle, and a flag that all had the University of Florida Gator mascot on it. Now, the Florida Gator doesn't exactly look like the Pine Manor Gator, but there was such joy in Beth when she gave these to me, because to her, being a Gator was so much a part of her identity, and she was so proud of that. So those gifts are all in my office in Halden, and every time I use them, I will always think of Beth and remember her. Last October, on Beth's birthday, several of us were planning to visit her at her home and bring her a cake and some flowers. But she actually had gone to the hospital and received a blood transfusion that morning. And when she returned home, she said she wasn't up to having company that day after all. So, we didn't go, but we all said, oh, let's, try to reschedule that as soon as possible. And that didn't happen. And I think we all regret not being able to reschedule that visit. And when I said that recently to Liz Carey Blum, she reminded me that at least Beth knew that we cared about her and wanted to see her. So that did make me feel better. And, my hope is that Beth knew how much so many people appreciated her. And I also hope that her contributions and her great legacy to Pine Manor is going to be able to continue, and she'll be remembered going forward, even when the Pine Manor that Beth knew and loved is no longer going to be around. But she will live forever in our memories, and hopefully in the memories of Pine Manor as well.
Thanks, Diane. That was beautiful. So next in our speaking order was going to be John Hatch, who is the Director of Grounds and Maintenance. He was unable to make it because of another obligation, and so he wrote something that Sarah Wolf is gonna read for us all.
Can everyone hear me? Yeah, okay. So this is John Hatch's words. I had the honor of being Dr. Gardner's friend for 42 years. She was always interested in the historic buildings and preserving them, and loved to talk about the different trees. This past year, we had big plans to restore the greenhouse in the Dane Science Building that was named after her family. And I'm sad that she won't be able to see that happen. I'll always think of her when I see the fir tree that we planted in front of the ferry building, which she brought back as a sapling from her property in Idaho. After having the tree in her yard for so many years, she called me about donating the tree and would I come to the house to figure out how to get the tree to the campus. Well, the tree was a lot bigger than a sapling. I told Beth I couldn't move the tree to the campus because of its size. And she said, maybe I can get my tree company to move it for us. So Beth made the arrangements and the two of us took off to look for the best place to plant it. Beth said no matter what, it had to be planted in front of the ferry building. I told her there was ledge in that area. I went and got the backhoe and dug some test holes to make sure we could plant it there. I dug 3 holes and we found the spot for it. Bless John Hatch. That's me. Now the tree is so tall and looks beautiful. You saw that tree in the slideshow. Beth was right. It turned out to be the perfect spot. I'll miss her helping me in the summer in the greenhouse, pruning all the plants that Jennifer Williams grew from cuttings to be passed out to whomever wanted one for their office to take home. Pine Manor lost a wonderful person. She was so dedicated to her students and friends and will be sorely missed.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks for reading that. And thank you to John Hatch for writing that. I'm now going to turn it over to our final speaker, President Emerita Rosemary Ashby. Rosemary, make sure you unmute because it looks like you're still muted. Rosemary, we can't hear you. I don't know if you're speaking yet, but if you could unmute the microphones at the bottom of the screen.
Rosemary, are you on both your iPad and your phone? Maybe just do it on the phone. It might be easier to unmute it.
Don't think I have the capabilities of unmuting. I can just ask to unmute. Let me see. Even see her on the list. Okay. Rosemary, I think while you're working out oh, there you go. Perfect. Thank you.
Because I could.
She needs to put her computer on mute.
Yeah, Rosemary, if you could mute your other device so that
Yeah,
we can't hear the background noise, that would be
I'm
great.
trying to. Oh, go away.
Rosemary, shut off the iPad.
Yeah, I have. Okay, sorry, everybody.
No need to apologize.
Am I okay now?
Yes, we can hear you great. Thank you.
Okay, you can't see me. I'm trying to get my picture up there. Now what? What do I do to get my photo there? Zoom. Oh, wait a minute.
Colleen, you're muted.
If you're on the phone, just unmute on where it says stop video or where it says
share screen.
Go on the video.
Share vid, start vid, there.
There you go. Yep.
All right, now what? Can you hear me?
Oh, yes.
What?
Yes, we can hear you and see you. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you. Sorry, everybody. I'm super retro. Anyway, I loved hearing everybody talk about Beth, and she spanned all my years at the, oh, let me go. Stop. Put it under a cushion. There. Is that better? No. I wanted to say,
Rosemary, I can
Yes.
move you to the waiting room on the iPad. So I'll move you to the waiting room on the iPad so you won't be able to, you'll be out of the room on that device until you're done, and then I'll bring you back in.
Okay, good.
Okay?
Thank you. Yes.
Okay. Hopefully that's better.
Okay. Beth spanned my whole, all my years at Pine Manor. When I came in 1970, she was a newly minted PhD from Brown, already teaching there. And she joined the old vintage people like Rod Henry and John Agnew. And she was teaching biology, as you knew, when we were still a two-year college. And when it came time, when we made the great shift from being a two-year institution, she was so invaluable, building our faculty, hiring the most wonderful people, including people like Dr. White and Nia Chester and Michelle O'Gara. And she designed our BA program. And she went on to renovate what had been an old garage into a workable science lab and facility. So she was a builder and an architect, as well as an extraordinary teacher. So I think everybody has mentioned those wonderful qualities about her and her absolute sort of fiendish antagonism to plagiarism. That was one of her absolute hatreds, but it would stand, of course, her student in good stead when they went on to other colleges or to graduate school. I'm sure none of them was ever caught plagiarizing ever again in their whole lives. Nobody has really talked about her two white Highland Terriers that she used to bring to faculty meetings. And they would sit under the table. For a while, they were quite quiet. And then they would get restless if the meeting went too long. And they would start growling and fighting with each other. But since she was a great favorite of then the president of the college, Carl Ferry, he would say nothing. He ran the faculty meetings and the dogs would fight with each other and growl and their leads would jingle around, but nothing would happen. So Beth could do anything. She was the golden girl at the college. And Adam and Benjamin, the dogs were called, and they went everywhere with her into class. And then James was born, and he was kind of the specimen child. She would bring him into biology classes, Exhibit A, for a while, till he got too large, poor James. But she was a brilliant, wonderful teacher. And I think her great legacy is her students who will go on with such strength and professionalism and confidence in their professional lives. They owe so much to Beth's teaching. I was so happy that in my second short tenure with the college, when I came back in, I can't quite remember whether it was 2000, Tom will know, it was the year before he came, 2014
2015.
2015, we were able to give Beth a Distinguished Service Award. And I was so very pleased that we were able to do that for her, because no one could have be more deserving of that award. And I was very proud that we were able to recognize her. Heaven knows why that wasn't done before, but it was a wonderful thing for the college to do for her. So God bless Beth. And thank you so much for inviting me to speak. Heaven, thank goodness I could at last do it. And I'm so glad to be back among all of you. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you so much for that, Rosemary. And I couldn't agree more about Beth's legacy really being the students that she's touched over the years. As has been noted previously, she taught for 50 years and then even past her final retirement from teaching in 2018, certainly has continued as a strong advocate for her students. I have received many tributes from alums of the college honoring Beth. In the interest of time, I can't read every piece of the paragraphs that were sent to me because we would be here for quite a long time, but there were sort of two main themes that emerged. So I'm going to share a couple of quotes from the alums and then certainly open it up if anyone has anything to add. So as you know, Pine Manor started as a women's college, and in her classes, Beth spoke frequently about women's health and women's health issues. She strove to empower women through science. As Kim Bowes wrote in her tribute about one of these aspects of Beth's classes, she said, while these things may seem trivial, they made a big impact on me. She made me mad in a good way at the unexamined systemic oppression of women that many of us, even the ones who considered ourselves feminists, didn't know was part of our everyday lives. Brenda Walters wrote, it reminded us what science really was. It was about learning from everything. And it turns out that as a medical pathologist, I specialized in perinatal fetal pathology, and I hope she would find pride in that. Beth had extremely high expectations of her students, but was equally dedicated to their success. One alum shared a short video clip, and I'm gonna try to play that for you right now, and then go back just a couple of more. Hold on one second. Sorry, let me just get it queued up. Share screen.
Hi, I'm Ann Dolan from the class of 1991. Well, I remember Dr. Gardner really well. The year was 1987, and I was a freshman at Pine Manor, and I was scared to death of taking biology because I hadn't done so well in science in high school. But Dr. Gardner was so approachable. She really made it come to life. She made biology fun and engaging, and I'll never forget her kindness that year. So, Dr. Gardner, we will miss you deeply, and thank you for making a difference in my life and many others.
And then Sarah Stevenson Jusko from the class of 1975 wrote, "She was someone you wanted to do well for. She took me in, trusted me to be responsible and to perform at her high standards, and helped me to advance scientifically to achieve my ambitious goals. I wish that I had shared again with her what a catalyst she was for me." Phyllis Beatty wrote, "Dr. Gardner raised our aspirations, our consciousness, our levels of learning and understanding. Unfortunately, she never raised our grades. We had to do that ourselves. May her memory always be the blessing it is now." Celine Hernandez wrote, "Dr. Gardner was spunky and full of insight and strong-minded. She didn't let her age nor body stop her from doing what she loved most, teaching. I'm so glad she did it until she couldn't, pretty literally. Her legacy is the knowledge and memories she leaves with us that we will be able to pass on to others in lessons and conversations. It was an honor to meet you." And then Brenda Walters wrote, "I remember her as being a serious and imposing, but still approachable. She had an aura of excellence around her, and that aura drove her students to work a little harder. Godspeed, Dr. Gardner." So now I would like to open up the floor if anybody wants to share any final memories, or again, I see that some people have been sharing in the chat. You can continue to do that. In the interest of time, probably, we'll just do this for a few minutes, being aware that some of you may have places that you need to go. But if you do want to talk, we would ask that you just use the raise hand feature so that we can call on you. And if you're not sure how to do that, if you open the participant list, it should give you the option to raise your hand. And I see Melinda's hand is up, so I will let Melinda start the
Thank you.
open remembrance.
I hope you can see, in honor of Beth, I am wearing my academic robes because we all remember Beth as the faculty marshal who marshaled us in for commencement and for the Honor Society, certainly. And those pictures just brought back to me such the warmth and everything in this wonderful community. And we had, so much fun. It was so much fun to see the colleagues and Beth there at that Honor Society, because that was an important part of what she did, sitting at the table, signing everybody's certificates. And I also wanted to say something about Bill's point about her support of faculty. Now, of course, I was in Halden Hall, not over in the science building as the literature professor, but she, first of all, it's hard to remember this. Some of the people on this who are here today will remember we didn't have a women's studies program at Pine Manor. And so I was a fairly new faculty member. I see Joan up there, you maybe remember this, and Nancy White. And so we all were, 12 of us somehow met after a faculty meeting to plan having an interdisciplinary program. And I somehow wound up teaching this. But as part of this, I had various faculty members come in to talk about their subject and women. And so Beth would come into my class, to the women's studies class, sit at the front desk, lay out her papers, and start to talk about how women weren't included in biology trials, et cetera. And so it was a big contribution that she made. Everybody was just volunteering her time, of course, to do this. And the other way was when I was working on my book on Catherine Lee Bates, I came down to Falmouth once in August 12th, Catherine's birthday. They had a big celebration and it was about 90 degrees. And Beth offered, they had a family home there in Woods Hole. And so she offered that as a place for my husband and me to stay after my talk. And it was just a lovely, this generosity that she had was for students, but it also was for colleagues. And so that is what I just wanted to add to what everybody else has said.
Thanks, Melinda. Let me look and see. I can't tell if anybody else's hands are up. I don't think so. Anybody else want to share anything before we close? All right. Well, if not, I know Susan Bear had something to say in conclusion. So I'm going to turn it over to Susan.
Betsy, Colleen, Betsy has her hand up.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Betsy, I did not see that. Go ahead.
I'm going to make it really short and quick because I wrote a little piece, but especially after, I'm so glad I came to this Zoom on top of everything. I wouldn't have missed it, but it's just amazing and not surprising to hear such similar stories. I mean, clearly we all knew the same person, different times, you know, different phases in life. And it's just amazing to me how the core of her was just so strong and clear through everyone's story. So I could go on, but I just want to say to the universe that I love Dr. Gardner. I will miss her and I feel grateful to be touched by her.
Thank you. Great. Anybody else? Brenda, yep.
I just want to say that she's one of the few teachers that I would sit in the class and I would take notes so fast and so furiously, and I would love every bit of it. It was like an athletic event, and those notes, and she just would pour out this knowledge, and it was just a thrill. It was like an athletic event with my hand, and then I took it all and had to consume it and understand it later and ask questions, and she just really set me forward in a biology situation. And I now live out in Vermont, and I have that same love of, you know, of the biological mysteries that are out there. And every animal, every plant is so interesting to me. And a lot of what I learned, and it was like an athletic event with my hand. And then I took zoology from her, really enriched that enjoyment. That's what I want to say.
Awesome. Thank you. Anyone else? All right, I will turn it over to Susan to close us out.
Well, thank you. I don't have much to say because I think everybody has said such beautiful things, but I think I want to say that by listening to people sharing their stories, obviously Beth had an impact on us all. And she wasn't one thing to one person, but she was many things to many people. Some of us knew her in many dimensions, like Nancy has spoken about, as a colleague and a friend, an educator and a teacher. But there are some of us that knew her perhaps only as a teacher, as the students would say, or as a working colleague. I think it's clear that Beth was a woman of many principles, and she was for sure the champion of the underserved, of women's rights, of healthcare for all, a champion of decency, justice, and fairness. I think her life as a biologist crafted for her a deep appreciation, as Brenda said, of the beauty and complexity of nature. And I think she understood the delicate balance of nature and civilization had to be carefully shepherded. The large property that she owned in Idaho was given to an organization similar to the Nature Conservancy. We've also heard, I think, that she was a tough taskmaster. Many students reported that she expected the best of them. She expected the students to stretch themselves, to learn and grow, and at the same time, however, she was willing to help them. And I'm sure that she believed that asking for help and guidance was part of the learning process and the maturation process. The only other thing that I would add is that I am sure that many of us have had the experience of being Beth-splained when she felt that we needed clarification or education about something. I am positive there was much Beth-splaining going on. And finally, I would just say that I think that Beth Gardner is the epitome of a tough act to follow.
Thank you, Susan. I couldn't agree with you more. Thank you all for coming today and sharing your stories of Beth. And I know that we are going to miss her. And I just been thinking the whole time we've been here how much she would have loved seeing everybody come together like this, because she loved seeing anyone affiliated with the college. So thank you all for your contributions and stay well.